You know, every single day, you make dozens of economic choices. What coffee to buy, where to work, what to save. But have you ever stopped to think about how all those little decisions fit into the giant, global puzzle of the economy? Well, today, we're going to connect those dots. We're going to break down the big ideas that really drive our world. It all boils down to a question that sounds almost childishly simple, but it's actually the most important question in all of economics. Why can't we all just have everything we could possibly want? And the answer is one single powerful word: scarcity. This is it. This is the fundamental problem. We humans have wants that seem to go on forever, but we live on a planet with limited stuff, limited time, limited money, limited oil in the ground, you name it. This whole concept is so unbelievably central that it's the very foundation of the entire field. This is the scarcity problem. It's the engine that drives literally every economic decision, from your personal budget all the way up to global policy. So, to tackle this huge problem, economics basically splits into two main fields. First, you've got microeconomics. Think of it like zooming in with a microscope on the small-scale decisions of people and companies. Then you have macroeconomics, which is like zooming out with a telescope to see the big picture: entire countries, global trade, the whole shebang. Okay, so if scarcity is the problem, how does society actually deal with it? Well, the answer lies in this constant, beautiful, and sometimes chaotic dance, the dance of supply and demand. These two forces are always pushing and pulling on each other, and they decide who gets what and for how much. First up, let's talk about supply. This is simply how much of something is available for sellers to offer. Think about, I don't know, sand. There's a ton of it, right? It's not scarce at all, so the supply is massive, which is why it's super cheap. And on the other side of that dance, you have demand. This is all about how much people want that thing. Now, let's flip the sand example. Think about diamonds. They are incredibly rare, incredibly scarce. And because of that, demand is through the roof, and people are willing to pay a fortune for them. So here's where the magic happens. When the force of supply, how much there is, meets the force of demand, how much it's wanted, they find a balance point. And that intersection, that perfect sweet spot, is what sets the market price for pretty much everything you buy. Now, this whole mechanism of setting prices doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? Over the centuries, societies have built entire systems, entire rule books to manage this dance. And that's led to a huge debate: capitalism versus command economies. The big idea behind modern capitalism came from an economist named Adam Smith, and he introduced this wild concept of the invisible hand. His theory was that when everyone just chases their own self-interest, they somehow, unintentionally, end up making society better off as a whole, almost like an invisible force is guiding everything. But for that invisible hand to work its magic, a society has to guarantee a few basic rights. These are really the pillars of the whole system. You have to be able to own your own stuff. You need the right to compete with other businesses. People need the freedom to choose what they buy. And, this is a big one, entrepreneurs have to be able to make and keep their profits. That's the reward for taking a risk. And looking at this comparison really brings the difference into focus. In free markets, you've got private individuals in charge of production, and prices are set by that supply and demand dance. But in command economies, like socialism or communism, the government steps in. It controls the key resources, it plans the economy, and the goal is less about individual profit and more about social equality. But historically, these pure command economies have run into some really big problems. When you have central planners making all the decisions, they're often disconnected from what's actually happening on the ground. You can also lose the incentive for people to work hard or innovate, and it often leads to a whole lot of government control over everyday life. So what's the answer? Well, in the real world, almost every single country is what we call a mixed economy. They try to blend the innovation and energy of the free market with the safety nets and planning of government, really hoping to get the best of both worlds. So we've got all these different systems, and they're all trying to solve that same core problem of scarcity. But how do we know if they're actually working? How do we keep score? Well, to do that, we need to be able to measure an economy. The biggest, most famous measurement is the gross domestic product, or GDP. The easiest way to think about it is like a country's annual income. It's the total dollar value of every single thing, every car, every coffee, every haircut, that gets produced inside a country's borders in 1 year. It's our main tool for gauging the sheer size of an economy. Another key number is one you feel personally every time you go to the grocery store: inflation.
It just means a general increase in prices across the board. And what that really means is that your money is worth less. That dollar in your pocket just doesn't stretch as far as it used to. Now, when the economy starts shrinking instead of growing, that's when we hit a downturn. A recession is the official term for when the GDP falls for at least 6 months straight. It hurts, and unemployment goes up. But a depression? That's a whole different animal. It's a deep, long-lasting economic collapse with absolutely catastrophic unemployment, like the Great Depression back in the 1930s. But of course, in our totally interconnected world, no economy just exists on its own. They're all linked up, competing and cooperating on the world stage. And that brings us to our final stop, the global economic arena. To shield their own industries from foreign competition, countries sometimes turn to something called trade protectionism. They might put tariffs, which are just taxes on imported goods, to make them more expensive. They might use import quotas to put a cap on how much of something can be brought in. And in really extreme cases, they might declare an embargo, which is a total ban on trade with another country. But the opposite strategy is often way more powerful. To actually encourage trade, nations will get together and form common markets or trading blocs. The idea is to tear down the trade barriers between themselves, creating this huge, powerful economic zone that can benefit all the members. It's all about cooperation over protection. And all of this, from scarcity to supply and demand to the global market, it leaves us with one huge unanswered question that every society on Earth is still trying to figure out. It's the central challenge of modern economics. What is the perfect balance between the economic freedom that sparks innovation and the social well-being that makes sure everyone is taken care of? There is no easy answer, and the search for one is what shapes our world every single day.